What is up, my imagination connoisseurs? It is I once again, the notorious RMB. Not here to talk about Star Trek or Discovery. Um, I'm here to continue my ongoing series of favorite films from my collection. Now, once again, I have to say, I don't think these are necessarily the best movies of all time. And sometimes I'm going to leave out classics. Like I'll tell you right now, somebody in the chat already said Forbidden Planet. Forbidden Planet's one of my favorite movies of all time. But to me, it's kind of like a genre classic. It's the basis for Star Trek. So it's not on this list, even though I own it and I dearly, dearly love it. So basically, these are more films, sort of offbeat films that some of them you might have heard of, a lot of them probably not. But they're favorites of mine that aren't, I think, the most obvious, even though there's a few in here that are pretty obvious, especially the last one. But yeah, so I'm just going to start. And as some of you may know who've watched this series before, one of my favorite working directors today is the Chinese director Wong Kar-wai, who I completely adore. I from the cinematography of Christopher Doyle to his worldview and to the way he approaches modern urban living. I mean, it borders on magical realism in a way. But this film from 1995 was actually going to be part of a previous film that I talked about, which is Chungking Express. That was part of my C's. And this is his film, Fallen Angels. Now, I adore this movie. Once again, it's two very disparate stories that kind of intersect with one another, but they really don't. And the first story is basically about a hitman and his partner, and they never meet. And the hitman sleeps at night, goes on his jobs, and then his partner, who's a woman, cleans his apartment and kind of is obsessed with him, but they never the two shall meet. And then his partner gets involved in another story in the film, gets involved with this kind of a crazy, let's call him a free spirit. And once again, the film is really an examination of modern Hong Kong, and really, because after listening to me talk, how much I just love storytelling and stories. These are to me, these are stories that are happening all around us all the time, even though they have to deal with the criminal underworld and some unsavory people. But it really speaks to kind of the wonder of living in cities, and specifically Hong Kong of the mid 90s, and how there's all this, the cameras are constantly swirling around, the colors, you never know when there's going to be an erotic sequence set up against a jukebox playing Laurie Anderson. I mean, anything is possible in the Hong Kong of Wong Kar-wai's films, and this film it's nothing if not just cool, effortlessly cool. But I really recommend watching this and Chungking Express together as a double feature, because really Fallen Angels was derived from Chungking Express, and it's just a fantastic film, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So I can't recommend it highly enough. So that's Fallen Angels. Now, this next film, that was 95. We're going to jump down to 1973. This is a very celebrated film. It won the Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival in 1973. It's a Czech-French co-production. It's animated, and it's one of my favorite science fiction films of all time. And it was directed by René Laloux, and a man named Roland Topor designed a lot of it. And for many of you, you probably have seen this, but if you have not, this film, Fantastic Planet, is easily one of my favorite movies of all time, if not one of my favorite science fiction films of all time. And if I could remake any movie in live action, I would remake this film. But people might say that I was copying James Cameron, because the aliens, the drogs in this film, are blue, giant blue people. Now, I saw this movie, the first time I saw this movie, and I've talked about this before, but I'm going to tell the story again. So the first time I saw this movie was in 1976, and my mother had taken me to see Logan's Run. I was 9, my sister was 7, and this was actually playing on the second bill. It was a double feature on an opening night movie. It was crazy to see this huge MGM studio release of Logan's Run and then see Fantastic Planet. And basically, Fantastic Planet takes place on the planet Yagam, or however you pronounce it. I always say Yagam, and there are the Drogs that are the main inhabitants of this planet, and there are human beings that presumably went there a long, long time ago. But the human beings are treated as pets by the Drogs. They're taken in as pets, or wild ohms are exterminated. The Drogs come to view them as a threat, and they're basically either enslaved or in servitude to the Drogs. And the whole story is it's a metaphor for escaping your captors and breaking the bonds of slavery and breaking those shackles. And what's so cool about this movie is it portrays an alien civilization, the Drogs, as being truly alien. I mean, all their weird rituals are displayed and weird. It's just the movie's incredibly surreal. I mean, if there's a movie to watch stoned, Fantastic Planet is it. The soundtrack is very strange, but it's very iconic. It's very cool. And what I love about this movie, now, normally I would never recommend you guys do this because it is subtitled in French. It's originally in French, but there is an English dub. Now, I saw the film. So when my mom, the first 10 minutes of this movie, you see a human mother with her baby being chased and by these Drogs. You don't know what's happening at first. She's running away, and there's these giant like spikes being thrown at her, and she gets flicked around, and she dies. She dies, and one of these aliens, Tiva, the young female protagonist of the movie, takes this baby who she names Tyr, and takes this baby home. When I first saw this movie in the theater, again, I was 9, my mother got up. I mean, she was a trooper. She stayed there for 10 minutes and watched this scene. She gets up and she grabs me and my sister in the theater, by the shoulders. And she's all indignant. My mom's like, I am not going to sit here and watch a movie where human beings are treated like ants. She jerked us out of the theater. And this was, 1976. And so I never got to see, I was totally into this at 9. I'm like, this movie was blowing my mind, and I didn't get to see it. And it wasn't until years later, where it played on a double bill with Ralph Bakshi's Wizards, that I finally went and got to go see Fantastic Planet. Again, it's an incredible film. And it's done actually with what's called limited animation. It's like photo cutout animation. And there's all of these weird interludes where you get to see sort of the ecosystem of Yagam, and you get to see the weird creatures and things. And it's very funny when you see how the wildlife of this planet has evolved. And so it's a joyful movie. It's like 72 minutes long. Oh, and another thing, I was going to say, I keep getting sidetracked. I would normally tell you to do this, but the original voice track obviously is in French, and I would never watch a movie dubbed. I can't stand that. But this movie, because I saw it dubbed first, and then I've subsequently watched there's Gilbert, ladies and gentlemen. Gilbert is here to join the chat. I think he's gonna, sit down in his little bed maybe and take a load off. There he is. Gilbert, thanks for joining us on this chat. So the American dub, the English language dub that was prepared by, I believe, Roger Corman's New World Entertainment. I think it was New World. The elder Terrell, when he gets terror when he gets older, narrates the whole movie, and it's actually Barry Bostwick from Rocky Horror Picture Show, and who starred as Ace in Megaforce. So Barry Bostwick does the actual voice narration, and you got to see this. I mean, that's great. So we go from 1973, let's go up 2 decades to 1993. Now, this next movie is a sequel to one of my favorite movies of all time. One of my favorite movies of all time. Everything's my favorite movie of all time, but truly this movie is. If you have never seen Wim Wenders' film about angels, it is one of the greatest films ever made, and this is its sequel, Far Away So Close. If you have never seen Far Away So Close, it is the sequel. Did I not say? It's the sequel to Wings of Desire. Wings of Desire is one of my favorite films of all time. And Wings of Desire has a sequel. A lot of people don't even know it has a sequel, but it's called Far Away So Close. Now, if you haven't seen Wings of Desire, it's the story of Berlin, really, the city of Berlin. And when Wings of Desire was made, the wall had not come down in Berlin yet. It still crossed the city and divided the city. And Wings of Desire is basically about two angels, Demille and Casil, and Demille falls in love with a mortal woman and eventually decides to give up his wings and follow his bliss and live happily ever after as a human being. And it's a wonderful lyrical movie. More goes on, but the premise of the film is that there's angels surrounding us everywhere. And they're all throughout Berlin, and they're frequently right over our shoulders, and we don't know it, and they can hear our thoughts, but they only see the world in black and white. They can't perceive the world in color. And Wings of Desire, it's a very beautiful, it's a very lyrical movie, and it's probably my favorite fantasy film of all time. It's just incredible. And I've always imagined that Neil Gaiman, when he wrote The Sandman, was heavily influenced by the depiction of angels in Wings of Desire, which was remade as City of Angels with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan, but no. So this is the sequel, Far Away So Close. Now the first movie followed Bruno Ganz, who played Demille, but this follows Otto Saunders' character, Casil, the other angel. And he, in this film, becomes mortal. But what's so different about this film is set in the Berlin after the wall fell, where there's a lot of criminal enterprise going on. And unfortunately, Casil does not have as good of a time as Demille did. He did not fall in love the same way. And this Far Away So Close is more of a tragedy. It's more of a tragic film. It's not as beautiful and lyrical as Wings of Desire is. It was made differently. Wings of Desire was famously really made without a script. There was poems, but it was made without a script. This is a much more conventional film. But I really love revisiting the characters from Wings of Desire. I like the fact that he went in a different direction. Nastassja Kinski's in this. Whenever you bring Nastassja Kinski into a movie, it's even better. Once again, has an incredible soundtrack. A lot of great pop music. Nick Cave famously appeared in Wings of Desire, and there's more of that in this film. But this film, the first film is really a love story and leaves you with a great big smile on your face. This film is much more melancholy, and it's just a terrific, wonderful movie that I wish Criterion would put out on Blu-ray, because it's not out on Blu-ray domestically, and that's too bad. I don't even know if it's out on Blu-ray internationally, but it's a fantastic film, and I recommend everyone get it. Now, it wouldn't be me if this next movie wasn't on this list. Now, I know some of you are going to be like, get out of town. You're going to turn this off right now, and it's going to invalidate everything you know about me, my erudite film taste. But you know what? I'm going to go for it anyway. What do you think it is? I'll tell you what it is. It's The Drift. That's right. Fast and the Furious 3. Tokyo Drift from 2006. Directed by Justin Lin, who went on to direct Star Trek Beyond and 3 other Fast and Furious movies. Now, why do I pick this movie? Why do I have this of all? The most maligned and misunderstood and disliked of the franchise. This is the bad stepchild of the Fast and Furious franchise. However, as anyone who knows me knows, this is the film actually third in the series, but in Fast and Furious continuity, it's actually the 6th film, really, sort of, kind of. It really kind of is. Yeah, I guess it is. It's the 6th film because, well, it's very strange because it really is. It takes place after the credits, sort of. It's very confusing. But anyway, why do I love this movie? I love this movie because, first of all, it's a great story. Lucas Black plays a kid who, because he's a street racer, he gets into a bit of trouble. He's always getting into trouble, and he gets sent to Japan because his father lives there. His father's in the military, and he gets sent to Japan to, of course, get straightened out. Of course, while he's there, that doesn't happen because he immediately falls into the Japanese drift culture and kind of runs afoul of this 2-bit grandson of a Yakuza kingpin, and who I don't even want to tell you who plays the Yakuza kingpin because it's a great cameo, more than just a cameo. And then, of course, Sun Kang is introduced in this movie as Han Solo. Han Sol, like City Soul. Now, I love Sun Kang as Han. He's one of my favorite characters in any movie, but he's clearly my favorite character in the Fast and Furious franchise. He's introduced in this movie for the first time, and he actually, it's something befalls him that's not so good in the movie, but he comes back in Fast and Furious 4, 5, and 6, which is amazing. All the movies that Justin Lin directed in the franchise, you have Sun Kang coming back playing the great Han Solo. Now, I love this movie because it's clearly, look, the entire Fast and Furious movie was derived from, there was an old B movie in the 50s, the Fast and Furious, or maybe it was the 60s. It's a B movie, but I love the fish out of water story. I love this sort of, you know, Lucas Black has a Southern drawl, even though he's from California. They've been moving around, and he's the fish out of water element in Japan because I've always wanted to go to Japan my whole life. I loved everything to do with Japan. The fact they're in Japan, they actually filmed some of the movie in Japan. I just love it. I love this movie so much, and it is, I don't care what you say. I love Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, or as I like to call it, the Drift. And I'm even friends with Nikki Griffin. I met Nikki Griffin when I was doing Femme Fatale. She's a friend of mine. She's in the beginning of this movie, which makes it even cooler that I actually know an actress who's a friend of mine who is also a big comic book nerd, and that she was in it. So it makes it even cooler. But I love this movie. A lot of people don't like it. I think it's terrific because it introduces us to Han, who becomes a big character in the Fast and Furious franchise, and my favorite character. So Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. I'll tell you a funny story. Well, no, I won't tell you that story. But anyway, it's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. Watch it, love it, and worship Han because he deserves to be worshipped. Here's another movie. We jump back from 2006. I believe it's 93. I believe so. Yes, it is 93. This is a fantastic lyrical film that was directed by the great Peter Weir. Now, Peter Weir is an Australian director who came to prominence in the mid 70s and into the 80s. And of course, his first films like The Cars That Ate Paris, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Gallipoli, The Year of Living Dangerously. He's one of my favorite directors. He also directed Master and Commander. He directed Witness, The Mosquito Coast. He's an incredible director. And this is one of his actually lesser known films. It stars Jeff Bridges and Rosie Perez and Tom Hulse. And it's just John Turturro's in this movie. Fearless. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend this film. This film is basically about a man who survives an airline crash. And he sort of loses his tether, and played by Jeff Bridges, and he loses his tether to reality. He figures since he's already died, he's kind of living in this detached fog from those around him. He's suffering from survivor's guilt and many sort of issues, and then he has to deal with his fellow survivors and his family, and it's just a wonderful lyrical film. It has a harrowing plane crash. I think this and the movie Alive have probably two of the most harrowing plane crashes ever put on film. But this plane crash, as harrowing as it is mystical. And there's just, I like films with existential protagonists who are sort of having this existential crisis. I'm drawn to those kinds of films. But it's a beautiful film, and it, for the longest time, it really wasn't available. It had come out on Laserdisc, but it was panned and scanned. And Warner Archive released it a few years back, and really, I was very excited that they did. And again, from one of our great directors who, of course, he doesn't work nearly as much as he should, but Peter Weir really put a mark on movies back in the late 70s and 80s and into the 90s. I mean, he's still directing movies, but I don't think he's considered the powerhouse in Hollywood as he once was. But he's just a wonderful, wonderful filmmaker. I mean, if you want to, Gallipoli is one of the most powerful anti-war films ever. And the climax, the very last moment of that film, is one of the most haunting and indelible images in all of cinema. So he's a terrific director, and I hope you guys will take a look at Fearless. Now, my next film, I should say 4 films. It's a set of movies that was they were rather notorious. These were other movies like when you first get your VCR, you hear about these movies and you can't get them. But thanks to Arrow releasing that a few years back made these films available. These are pure exploitation. Anybody who if you watch these movies, for those men in the audience who might, and I welcome men and women to watch these movies, but if you're a guy and you say that you like these films, you might get in trouble. I made the mistake of taking these movies to a party once in mixed company, and they didn't go over very well. I was just showing like a trailer and didn't work out. But because of Arrow releasing, they have put out all 4 of these movies in on Blu-ray. But unfortunately, the elements are not as good as they could be. However, these films are so beautifully shot, and so they really are. They've got weird theatrical flourishes, but basically, they're about women in prison, and that is, of course, the great Japanese film series, Female Prisoner Scorpion. Actually, that's the first one. There's 4, just Female Prisoner. So there's Female Prisoner Scorpion. There's Female Prisoner, and I got to get these right. Female Prisoner Scorpion Jailhouse 41. Female Prisoner Scorpion Beast Stable, and Female Prisoner Scorpion 701 Grudge Song. And now these movies are, it's interesting because I can't pronounce their name right. I'll try and get it right. Mieko Kaji, who stars in these movies, who was also in Lady Snowblood, another great series of Japanese films you should see. These films are literally women in prison. There's horrible violence, there's sex, there's all kinds of exploitation going on. These are movies that will never get made today, but they are beautiful films, and they are, they're widescreen movies, and they're the height of Japanese 70s exploitation cinema. The first 2 were 1972, and then the other 2 were 73. So you're looking at a glimpse of Japanese exploitation cinema from the early 70s. And if you like this kind of thing, and it's probably not popular to like this kind of thing today, but hey, that's exploitation cinema for you. And I know life goes on, and people are going to probably get mad at me for picking these movies, but it's an interesting look at the culture, and it's an interesting look at the kind of movies that don't get made anymore. And I really like Arrow for putting this out. It comes with a great booklet too, a big booklet about the whole series of the Female Prisoner Scorpion movies. And they absolutely fall into, I would imagine, what has come to be known as the Pinky Violence series of movies. A lot of fun, I have to say. Now for a change of pace, let's go all the way back up to 1989. We're going from 1972 and 3 to 1989 for this documentary. This is Alan Reinhardt's documentary, For All Mankind. This is an incredible documentary about the space program, specifically the Apollo program and our moon landings. Now, if you're a moon landing conspiracy theorist and you believe we didn't go to the moon, first of all, you shouldn't be watching me, and because I'd kick your ass just like Buzz Aldrin would. But this is a beautiful, beautiful documentary with incredible footage, and it's got audio commentary from actual astronauts, and it is a celebration of the Apollo program and going to the moon. And again, it came out, God, it's 30 years old now. It came out in 1989. I can't recommend this movie enough. If you like First Man, and the reason I picked this movie is First Man, the movie about Neil Armstrong, came out on home video this week, both on Blu-ray and on 4K. And it's, it's just, I can't recommend this movie highly enough. It really is a celebration. It'll make you feel young as when the world was new. But again, it's a documentary, but it's a fantastic documentary about the moon landing, all the moon landings, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Now, this next film was actually the second movie I ever saw by this director. It came out in the early 80s. I think it's 82. I I'm not sure, but I think it's 82. I don't want to get that wrong, but I can't remember. Can't remember everything. This film was the last film this director made in his native Holland before he made his first English language movie in 1985, which is called Flesh and Blood. I had seen his Academy Award winning film Soldier of Orange before that from the mid 70s. I am speaking, of course, about the incredible Paul Verhoeven and this incredible film, The Fourth Man, that stars Jeroen Krabbe and Renee Stausendijk. And this film, man, this film is one crazy movie. And basically, it's about a writer who, I guess, a famous author in Holland who goes up to spend a weekend talking about his writings and speaking to a literary society. And while he's up there, he basically falls in love with this woman's boyfriend that he's fantasizing about, yet develops a relationship with her as well. So he's a bisexual writer who has these crazy fantasies about this woman's boyfriend. I mean, and the fantasies are crazy. I mean, if you just got to see it. But this woman may or may not have killed her 3 previous husbands, and we don't know. And this writer's imagination starts running away with him, and his fantasy life and his reality starts blurring, and he becomes convinced that he's next on her list, that she's some kind of a Black Widow. It's not very subtle, and you watch it now, and but it's so great. It's a great thriller, and you see the over the top. There's some over the top gore in this film. There's some great sex scenes. Renee Stausendijk is smoking hot, and it is a really intriguing thriller that bears a striking. If you like Basic Instinct, and I like Basic Instinct very, very much, it's a trial run almost. Not, I shouldn't say trial run, but it's a fantastic film. It's based on a book, and it's a great thriller. And you can see it's sort of a cousin to Basic Instinct. It's a lot of fun, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And Jeroen Krabbe never really broke through in America. He was in The Living Daylights a couple years later, and I really like him as an actor. And Renee Stausendijk I actually got to meet at the Seattle International Film Festival. I was a little tongue-tied. I got to meet her and Monique van de Ven, who starred in Verhoeven's earlier film Turkish Delight, and it's from Katie Tipple. And again, this is just a tremendous movie that I can't recommend highly enough. And man, do I want this on Blu-ray, because this is the old Anchor Bay disc, and it really needs to be remastered, and I would love to get it. And it's a lot of fun, and you guys should watch it. Get back to me. Now, here's another film from 1981. It's based on a novel by John Fowles from the 60s. And John Fowles, who wrote this book, also wrote a book called The Collector. And there's a movie that stars Terrence Stamp, and it's really creepy. If you guys want a creepy time at the movies, go get the movie The Collector, which is on DVD. I didn't put it in my C's. I was thinking about it because it's a terrific thriller. But this came out in 1981, and it was directed by Carol Rice, and it was written by Harold Pinter, adapted the novel. That is, of course, the French, you can't really see the title, The French Lieutenant's Woman, starring Jeremy Irons and Meryl Streep. And this is another movie I'm very attracted to. When I first saw it, my mom, again, took me to see this movie because it's about movie making. And this film kind of tells the story, this Victorian era story. It jumps back and forth from this Victorian era story to the movie crew and the 2 actors that are making the adaptation of this Victorian era story. So it jumps in and out of the Victorian era story and the real life story. And Jeremy Irons and Meryl Streep play 2 actors that are having an affair, and the fictitious life sort of mirrors what's going on in real life. And the great Freddie Francis, the cinematographer, shot this movie. It's incredibly, it's gorgeous. I don't know if you can hear Gilbert, but he's barking there in the background, as he is wont to do. This film, when it came out, and this is the Criterion Blu-ray, which is beautiful. But when it came out, I thought it was this very important movie that's kind of been lost in the conversation. Whenever you hear you talk about Meryl Streep, you hear about a lot of her other movies, whether it's Sophie's Choice or whether it's her performance in The Deer Hunter or showing up in Manhattan or any of these other films that she made from the late 70s and the early 80s. People don't really talk about The French Lieutenant's Woman. And again, I was attracted to it when I saw it because of the movie making element of it. But again, it's a really lyrical movie. It's just beautiful. And it's a movie I've always loved that people don't seem to talk about, which is too bad. Now I come to the last of these 10 movies because I only picked 10. I have a lot of Fs. It was tough. I mean, I was going through and where I have like one shelf of E's, I've got like 3 shelves of F's. And there were so many things like Cronenberg's The Fly, but I'm like, everybody's seen Cronenberg's The Fly. But I had to pick something that I thought was more fun. And this film, it's been remade. But this to me is one of the great fun. Again, it's an 80s teen comedy that's also a horror movie. And the great Tom Holland directed it. It stars Amanda Bierce. And Chris Sarandon, by the way, is one of the great vampires ever put on screen. I am speaking, of course, about Fright Night. Fright Night. It's got Roddy McDowall, who plays the great Peter Vincent, who is a horror host, who gets William Ragsdale, who stars in the movie. First of all, here's the story. I'm sure everyone's seen Fright Night, but it's basically about a kid who thinks that the guy who's moved in next door to him, played by Chris Sarandon, is a vampire. Spoiler alert, he is. and Amanda Bierce, who later went on, we saw her on TV. What was it? She and Roseanne. She was Roseanne's friend. Or was she in Married with Children? I don't remember. But so Amanda Bierce plays William Ragsdale's girlfriend, and the film goes from there. If you haven't seen Fright Night, it's so good. It's so much fun. And Richard Edlund there's some visual effects in this movie that were done in 65 millimeter. The visual effects are great. The transformations are great. The gore is good, but it's just delightful. And it's a delightful movie. And to me, this movie should run on an eternal double bill with Ghostbusters, which came out the year before. But if you haven't seen this disc, actually, this is the UK disc, the UK Eureka Blu-ray. There's an incredible documentary on this, but I just read that Columbia, this was available. Fright Night has been re-released twice by Twilight Time, but Columbia Pictures is finally releasing Fright Night on properly domestically. Not that Twilight Time's discs weren't a proper release, but they're giving it all the bells and whistles, and they're going to put this long documentary, I believe, on the domestic release. The documentary is great. This film is so much fun. I can't believe this movie is now 34 years old, which to me seems insane. But that's the way the cookie crumbles these days. So again, people are saying to me like Fight Club. Fight Club's obvious. Everybody knows Fight Club. I mean, a whole generation of men was shaped by Fight Club. But these are sort of offbeat movies that are favorites of mine that I just thought I would share as part of my ongoing series of not the most obvious movies in the world. Some are a little obvious, but I'm hoping that these are movies that you might not have seen or heard of, or give them a try. I always throw in a few like Fright Night that are fairly obvious horror films, from the canon. There's always a few from the canon, but I like this list because it's just, I have eclectic tastes in movies, and I hope this reflects that, and you guys will check these out. So now, as I am wont to do, I'm going to go up and answer questions. Now, I have to say, one of the next things that I have to do is, as you know, I decided to just do random giveaways for the people that have donated to my channel. So if you're a Patreon member, or you have asked me a super chat, or if you put your name in our mailing list that's going up on my website, theburnettwork.net. If you do any of those things, I'm going to randomly enter you into a drawing for something, just for fun, just for participating and supporting. And even just putting your name on my mailing list that's on the website. I just figured I would have these random giveaways just for fun. And so the giveaway today, as people know or might remember, is for the original run, the prestige format run of Neil Gaiman's work for DC, Black Orchid. It's a 3-issue prestige format series. I've got them set mint condition. So for those supporters who have donated, or those supporters who've asked super chat questions, or those supporters who just put their name in on the website and put your email, I keep adding to this list. And by the way, you stay on this list. This list is a rotating list. You never get taken off. You're on this list eternally. So I'm going to go and I'm going to pick a random name from on this. I have this randomizer software. So let's see. Let me go up here and so the person who wins. Oh, what do you win this time? Okay, I realized there's a set of comics I was going to give away before and I didn't. Today's gift, today's random surprise is the full run of Mike Barr and Jim Apparo's Batman and the Outsiders, which I was going to give away earlier, and I forgot to do that. And so you get that. I think it's like 35 issues, 31 issues. You get the entire run. If you win, you get the entire, or if you get randomly chosen, you get the entire run of Batman and the Outsiders. So let me see. Let me go here and actually hit the button. Hang on. I got to make sure. And who gets that? A Patreon subscriber named Cheeky Yuki. Cheeky Yuki, you just won yourself a full run of Batman and the Outsiders. Or pardon me, you didn't win Batman and the Outsiders. You won Neil Gaiman's Black Orchid. Batman and the Outsiders gets picked tomorrow. So Cheeky Yuki, you just got yourself an original run of Black Orchid, written by Neil Gaiman, and I believe painted by Dave McKean. It's a great series. And then tomorrow, whoever gets randomly picked gets the Batman and the Outsiders. So now I'm going to go up to the top and I will read the questions. Topher Rocks, thank you for the super chat. Says, hey, Rob, I'm 31 and I've lived in St. Louis, Missouri my whole life. It's home. I was curious if you considered LA or Washington home. That's a really interesting question, Topher. What he's asking me is, do I consider Los Angeles or do I consider Seattle home? Well, I grew up in Seattle, and I think my life changed from the time I was an infant to the time I left. I left Seattle 2 weeks after my 21st birthday. So, and I've never lived back in Seattle. I think I consider Seattle my home, but I've lived in LA now for 30 years. I mean, the Sandmen can come and get me because I've celebrated my last day. But I do consider Los Angeles my home. Now I go back to Seattle. It's so different. It's such a different place. And I don't have any adult memories. I mean, I'd only drank in Seattle for 2 weeks before I left, so I don't have memories. And it's funny, now that I've lived here and I've basically been in Los Angeles, I lived mostly in Hollywood, in and around Hollywood for the first 25 years. So you go around the Hollywood area and I've got so many stories to tell about things that happened to me in Los Angeles. That's a really good question though. So I think that, I'd have to say that Seattle will always be my home, but it isn't anymore. James Bonner asks, thanks for your super chat, James. On the topic of your alphabetical film list, saw Amelie recently and thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad you did. That's what I like to hear. I like people that come back and tell me what they think of the list. Amelie it's every time I watch that movie, just gets better to me. I'm astonished by the craft, the technical achievements, but really, if any movie encompassed the joie de vivre I feel about being alive in this age, Amelie is one of those films. I mean, when I first saw that, I believe I was sitting next to Steve Melching. I was at the Sitges Film Festival in Barcelona, and there were posters for the movie all over the trains and all over the city when I first saw it. And there's a moment in that movie, and I'll tell you what that moment is, when the man opens up his tin box of memories. And when that happened in the movie, tears were streaming down my face. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe how much this movie just affected me. And it just creeped up. I had no idea. It was one of those, it was like of getting a incurable disease. It just takes hold in your system. And it took hold, it rooted in my brain. And I was, first of all, the movie is so beautiful. And it's just a delightful movie, but it hit me emotionally because of just, how much I related to it. And I don't think I've ever seen a movie before or since that encompassed my worldview. So yeah, I mean, that's a great A great film. I'm glad you liked it. Anthony Gonzalez is here. He says, thank you, sir, for that super chat. When the trailer for The Undiscovered Country came out and Kirk was vaporized, what was your reaction? How did the fan base react? I was only 11. I don't know if I don't remember that necessarily. I don't remember that. I mean, I remember loving, there's a teaser trailer for Star Trek 6 that I remember more, which was, it was the Enterprise, but they were projecting images from Star Trek episodes onto the hull of the Enterprise. And that teaser trailer was really amazing. But it wasn't like the fervor that had erupted when people had heard that Spock died. What was really interesting is when people had heard the rumors that Spock was going to die in Star Trek 2, as did I. And when you go see it at the beginning of Star Trek 2, Spock dies, but he dies in the simulator. So that was a total great fake out where everyone's like, oh, I remember sitting in the theater. I saw Wrath of Khan the day it opened 4 times. They had this laser show at the John Dance Theater. The same place I saw Logan's Run, the same place that I saw Superman the movie, and the same place that I saw Star Trek the Motion Picture and countless other movies. And they had this laser show before it started. But anyway, when the whole audience like breathed this sigh of relief when Spock gets killed in the simulator, well, he fakes his death, obviously. It's a simulated experience, the Kobayashi Maru test. And people thought, oh, so he doesn't really die. And then, of course, he died. I cried. So it was, it was rough. That was rough. But I don't remember any kind of a fervor developing over Kirk being vaporized in the trailer for The Undiscovered Country. I don't remember that. Let's see. Tommy Martinson's here. Tommy, how you doing? Well, he says, one of my favorite F movies is Peter Weir's Fearless. Jeff Bridges is phenomenal in that haunting and powerful movie. Were you here? Were you here, sir? Haunting and powerful? That's on my list. It was on my list of Fs. And yes, I love Fearless a lot. And it's another movie I don't think gets enough credit. It's kind of a forgotten film. Vegetable Tube. Well, thank you for this super chat. Vegetable Tube asks, will there be a pre-order for an Imagination Connoisseur t-shirt? There are Imagination Connoisseur t-shirts already. You can get them now. You can order them now. If you go to my website, that's theburnettwork.net. There is on top, on one of the pull-down menus, there's a link to TeePublic that has Robservation swag. And there is an Imagination Connoisseur t-shirt. You can get hoodies, you can get t-shirts, you can get coffee mugs, whatever you want. And every time one is sold, the channel makes $2. So, and I like them. I have the Robservations, and you can get an Imagination Connoisseur. I love my hoodie. It's really fuzzy on the inside. It's really warm, and I really like it. I wear that hoodie all the time, which means I have to wash it all the time too. So I'm curious how long the printing will stay, but it seems to be holding up fairly well. So you can get that. You can get Robservations t-shirts, but go to TeePublic and you can pick your colors, and it's pretty cool. So go to my website, theburnettwork.net, and you can find the pull down menu, and it has the link to swag, to Robservation swag. Rick S sends in a super chat. Thank you, Rick. You are on the list now. You can win the full run, the first run of Batman and The Outsiders. So thank you for that. Let's see where we're at in terms of questions. Writer BL Alley says, Failsafe, Fargo, Field of Dreams, First Blood, A Fish Called Wanda, Fletch, The Fly, Forbidden Planet, Frailty, Frequency, A Festival of Frames flashing frequently for finicky fans. Yes, sir. All great films. But again, all those are so well known, even Failsafe. But Field of Dreams is one of my favorite movies ever. Let's see. Crixus Maximus says, he's talking about Failsafe. The movie Failsafe was the 60s one. The 2000s one with Keitel was cool too. Let's see. Vesta's here. She says, sorry, I have to cheat a little. Mine is Fellowship of the Ring, then The Fly, then Farewell My Concubine. Ooh, another great movie, The Faculty, and that's just from the top of my head. We park our shuttlecraft in the same hangar deck. Yes, we do. Gramash says, hello, Robert. Eddie from Space says, Frozen next. Writer BL Alley says, Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon is an X-rated parody of Flash Gordon, but not Flash Gordon, the Sam J. Jones Flash Gordon. It's just an X-rated movie that actually has model work by the great Greg Jean, who built the mothership in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Yes, let's see. Maybe Harryhausen's First Men in the Moon with Lionel Jeffries. That's a good one. I like that one. I don't have that. I don't own that movie. I should own that movie. I should see if it's out there. Pre-live teacher says, "Good evening, Rob. Watch season 2, episode 2 of Discovery. You enjoyed the story of relocated human community." Yes, I would love to have seen that human community delved into a lot more instead of just in one room, in one church. Like, what is that? What was that community like? There's 11,000 people on that planet. I wanted to see more of that community. But, they had to put that community in peril, I guess. Vesta says, Wings of Desire was great, but I didn't know that it had a sequel. That's what I'm doing this list for. Far Away, So Close. Check it out. It's great. Mike Bodden says we'll have the entire list on the website in about 10 minutes after the end of the stream. Nay says Freddie got fingered. I got a story about that for you. After I directed Free Enterprise, I was up to direct 2 movies that I almost got. One was Dude, Where's My Car? The other was Freddie Got Fingered. They were serious. I was in serious contention to direct those movies. I thought I had got okay. People ask me, why didn't your career amount to much? So I'd made this movie Free Enterprise 20 years ago. Came out 20 years ago. And then when it gets festival buzz, we started to win some awards. We won Best Screenplay and Best Film at the AFI Fest here in LA. So you end up going to all these meetings. I used to call them Evian meetings because you go to have meetings with mid-level executives that couldn't greenlight a movie for you anyway. But I was up to direct Dude, Where's My Car? And when I first read the script for Dude, Where's My Car? It was a complete stoner movie. I thought it was funny because nobody was making stoner movies in the early aughts because, Cheech and Chong movies had fallen out of favor. We'd come through the drugs are bad, Just Say No and all that. And I thought that the original script for Dude, Where's My Car? Was hilarious. And the characters called their pot shibby. They were total stoners. They said shibby this and shibby that, which I thought was funny in the context of the script. And it had aliens in it. So to me, it was a Cheech and Chong movie meets Repo Man. That's kind of what I thought it was. That's what I would go for. And I went in, I did this presentation to all the big suits at Fox, the producers of the movie. I was in the room. I thought I freaking nailed it. And my agents at the time, I was represented by William Morris. They heard that I'd done a great job. And then they called back and they said to my agent that I was too into the whole drug issue. And I wasn't even a stoner myself. I didn't even smoke pot. I mean, it put me to sleep. Whenever I smoke dope, I always dream about the first $6 Million Man episode I ever saw. Seriously, that's what happens. I have these weird flashbacks to that particular episode when Steve Austin pulls out a cement thing out of the ground and throws it at this SWAT van that has this electronic equipment in it that's putting this whole town to sleep. Every time I get totally stoned, I always think about that. I don't know why, but it's a true story. So I came down too hard on the drug aspect, which I thought was kind of subversive because at the time they decided to cut all the drugs out. So they would turn the movie from an R-rated film into a PG-13 movie. And it was, these guys were just kind of like, dude, they were kind of dumb. And I didn't get the job. So, but I feel sorry for the guy who did get the job because the gentleman who directed Dude, Where's My Car? Who I met, I forget his name, but he died of cancer this year. So anyway, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but that's a true story about how I didn't get a job. Pre-Live Tuesday says, Rob, in your opinion, which of these creators have left the greatest mark on sci-fi? Irwin Allen, Glenn Larson, or Gene Roddenberry? You know what? I've got to say Gene Roddenberry because while I like Irwin Allen, he did Land of the Giants and Time Tunnel. Those were big movies when I was a kid. Glenn Larson, of course, created Battlestar Galactica. Gene Roddenberry's series created Star Trek, obviously, in the 60s, continues to go on and reinvent itself and be relevant. No one ever made Land of the Giants movies or time travel movies. I think Battlestar Galactica, you could say it's one of the most, the remake of Battlestar Galactica is one of the greatest, if not the greatest science fiction show of all time. But again, Star Trek keeps reinventing itself for new generations. But so I'd probably say Gene, hands down, really. Gramash says, I disagree. The worst movie in the franchise is the second one, Too Fast, Too Furious. A lot of people say that, but look who we got introduced to the franchise in that movie. Come on. Tokyo Drift is actually good because it went other places and brought back racing culture lost in the future movies. I agree, man. I love Tokyo Drift so much. I think it's so much fun. I love it. And by the way, justice for Han. No justice for Han, no peace. Eddie from Space says, when he says 95, I know what movie it's going to be. Fearless. Crixus Maximus says, love Master and Commander. Absolutely. And that's going to be on my M's, I think. Nerf Herder 21 says Tokyo Drift rules. Bow Wow's Incredible Hulk car. Come on, Justice for Han. You are with me, Nerf Herder. Absolutely. Donnie Pearson says, hello, everyone, and happy birthday to Australia. Yes. Hello, Rob. I'm listening to my orchestral mock-up cover of John Williams' NBC Nightly News theme, tune The Mission, among other things. Dun, 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 dun. That's a great theme. Brian McGovern says, I only remember the scene with Rosie Perez. Spoilers. Oh, yeah. I won't say that. Of course, you've already read it. But yes, Rosie Perez's baby Bubbles dies, and she couldn't save him. Fisher King, that was a good one. I should have put, but it's like Terry Gilliam's best movie, 50 First Dates. Another one. Brian McGovern says, yeah, that end scene in Gallipoli wrecks me every time, doesn't it? It's hardcore, man. Nerf Herder 21 says, have you seen the Japanese film Wolf Guy? No, but I would. Tippy Toes says, hi from England. Hello, Tippy Toes. How are you? George Clayton George has got to mention Falling Down and Frankenhooker, directed by the great Frank Henlotter. Frank Henlotter directed Frankenhooker. He also directed Basket Case, which is a favorite of mine, actually. And Falling Down, directed by Joel Schumacher, starring the great Michael Douglas. Great movie. Let's see. Eddie from Space says, but people didn't go to the moon. I was there at that time. I know what I talk about. Yes, we did. You can actually see the landing areas now. They've been plotting them. Other countries have been plotting them with their space probes. Crixus Maximus says, hey, Rob, do you have any memory of the Apollo 11 landing? I'm not. I was 2. I had no recollection of that, but I did. I was a huge space freak, and by the time I was 5, I knew all the astronauts' names. But yes. Nay says, oh, Flesh and Blood is good. It is. Paul Verhoeven's first English language movie with Jennifer Jason Leigh and Rutger Hauer are in that movie. Brian McGovern says, Fourth Man saw that years ago. One scene I remember is that in the Mary for Jesus scene, could have sworn I heard him. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. There's a scene where, you just got to see it. But you need to see. Oh, Pre-Live Teaser says the BBC has done a great documentary about Paul Verhoeven. My favorite Verhoeven movies are Total Recall and RoboCop. Those are great, although I love Starship Troopers and I love Basic Instinct. Dennis K, 1979, a.k.a. The Blue Corner says the sequel to The Collection is better. No, it's The Collector, not that Collector. The Collector back from the early 60s with Terrence Stamp. Different Collector. Nerf Herder 21 says, just started watching the original Trek for the first time. Where have you been all my life? Well, it's been here, but I'm glad you're seeing it now. That's fantastic. Jay Giles Band, Fright Night is awesome, says Eddie from Space. Yes, Fright Night is great. Dr. Logan says, have you mentioned Fantastic Voyage? I didn't mention Fantastic Voyage, but that is another great film. I think that's 68, maybe 68. I like Fantastic Voyage. It's really good. Let's see. Just got on any mention of Robin Williams sci-fi thriller Final Cut. No, I did not mention that. I've never seen that movie. I need to see that movie. One movie I forgot says Vesna was Cat People with Nastasia Kinski, and I love David Bowie's music in it. Oh, his version of Putting Out Fire from the Cat People soundtrack is way better. And Giorgio Moroder's score, I used to listen to that when girls would depress me in high school. I used to listen to the Cat People soundtrack and go to this park called Luther Burbank late at night. It was great. Pre-Life Teacher says, I remember buying Black Orchid as a teen. Dave McKean art is amazing. It is amazing. And Cheeky Yuki, my patron subscriber, Cheeky Yuki won that. Let's see. Mike Bodden says, a list of all the movies is now up on the Burnettwork.net. Just click on the link. Thank you for doing that. Matt Poole says, Rob, any chance of doing an episode where you talk about your Lord of the Ring experience? Those films changed my life and made me the film fan I am today. Well, you know what? I might have a very interesting surprise. I can't say anything about it because it might not happen. But if it does, it's Lord of the Rings related, and I'll tell you all about it. And it will definitely be here on the Burnettwork. So tell your friends that they should subscribe. Let's see what's going down here. Oh, I've got more super chats from you. Rick S. Thank you for that, sir. Robin Williams' Final Cut film is one of the best sci-fi thrillers I've seen. What say you? Dude, I haven't seen that. I need to go see this. I need to see this. Where is it? Can I get it on Blu-ray? Is it streaming? Hit me back. Crixus Maximus says, Kirk deserved better, ideally disappearing mysteriously. He could have faded away back into the Nexus. Man, the Generations bothers me for so many reasons, but that is the worst. Let's see. Tommy Martinson in Sweden, I believe, right? Tommy is here from Sweden. He says a theater here in Sweden will have a 25th anniversary showing of a fully remastered version of Schindler's List tomorrow. Have seen the movie several times, but never on the big screen. Can't wait. That's awesome. It's great on the big screen. Let's see what I got here. Anthony Gonzalez, another super chat. Thank you, Anthony. What film was more important, Rocky or 78 Superman? Well, I think that's interesting. I mean, Rocky, of course, won the Best Picture in 1976. It won the best in 77 for 1976. And it beat out, we talked about it, beat out some important movies like All the President's Men and Network. It was a very, I think, important movie. But I think in terms of the genre, I think Superman, the movie, still looms large over the comic book film, even though, I mean, it came out in 1978. Superman, the movie, is 41 years old this year, and we're still talking about it. I mean, it came out a year after Star Wars came out, a year before Alien. And I think it's an incredibly important film. And so I think that that's great. I mean, I think Superman, the movie, then it would loom larger. So, Fred Hensley is here. He says, regarding Starship Troopers, how many people don't realize just how different the movie was from Heinlein's book? Would you also like to see a movie made more faithful to the book? What Fred is saying, for those of you who don't know, yes, Starship Troopers is very different, the movie, than the book is. And the book is interesting because all the soldiers wore these power suits. And it is pretty different. But, you could remake Starship Troopers, and they've been trying and make it closer to the book. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you could remake that. But I really like what they did with Starship Troopers. I mean, I think it's a heck of a science fiction film, and it's definitely a satire, and it really, I love the fact that in that movie, the human beings, all of them, all the veterans of the wars, they're all just torn up and they're missing limbs. And, to be an adult in that movie is to be messed up, which I thought was very funny. Tommy Martinson says, what's your favorite director's cut of all time? Mine is Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven. That's a really good one. But the director's cut was a near masterpiece. I would say the Kingdom of Heaven is totally up there. I think the Kingdom of Heaven director's cut is the only version of that movie to watch. I really like the director's cut of The Abyss a great deal. And of course, I love the director's cut of Star Trek, the motion picture. But I might have to go with you on that. I think that Kingdom of Heaven is a movie. It's really weird how Ridley Scott's films, he has so many movies that have different cuts, whether it's The Counselor, whether it's Kingdom of Heaven, whether it's Legend. Alien has an alternate cut. I mean, there's a lot of his films that do, and it's weird that he allows that to happen. Beatmaster asks, which one do I prefer, La Femme Nikita or Leon? I really like La Femme Nikita, but I'm gonna have to go with Leon. I really like Leon. La Femme Nikita is more of a straight genre exercise, but Leon has a lot of heart. I really, really like Leon. Aaron Johnson says Star Trek First Contact is a great Star Trek film when Picard is worried about the Borg and that he explains to everyone it's important to protect their ship despite the Borg causing trouble. Yeah, I mean, First Contact, it's easily the best Next Generation movie, but I think they covered so much of the Borg in the original series. I thought the First Contact, while an action romp, it kind of retold a story that we'd already seen before, but it was writ large on the big screen. So that's cool. I like that. Vegetable Tube sends in another super chat. Thank you for that. Vegetable Tube. I'm adding you to the list for the Batman and the Outsiders run, which is a really goofy run of Batman, by the way. If you don't know that run of Batman, it's very goofy, but funny. Vegetable Tube says, Starship Troopers, would you like to know more? I always want to know more. If you guys haven't seen Starship Troopers, there's these great media breaks that Verhoeven sort of pioneered. I've always thought that Starship Troopers and RoboCop take place in the same universe, the the Verhoevenverse, because the media breaks that you see in Starship Troopers are kind of akin to the media breaks that they have. They're not called media breaks, but they're like they advance the plot in Starship Troopers by showing you these media breaks, and at the end they always are like, do you want to know more? And it's kind of like the media breaks that they showed in RoboCop. And I'd like to think that the fascist society that arose out of the ashes of the society we see in RoboCop it is the same society in Starship Troopers. I've always thought that. So Vegetable Tube, thank you for that, and thank you for this supporting the channel. It's great. But yeah, that's yeah. Would you like see? Now I've got it stuck in my mind. Do you want to know more? I do want to know more. I always want to know more. Let's see. I highly recommend the Korean Netflix miniseries, The Kingdom, that just dropped. Did it just drop? I didn't know it dropped. Okay, for those of you who don't know, this is like a Korean period zombie series. Man, yeah, right up my alley. I can't wait for this. Period zombies. Bring it on. I can't wait. I didn't realize it had dropped. That is the next thing I'm going to stream. I'm still hate watching Manifest, but they apparently found another time traveler in this new episode, so I'm still watching it. I don't know why. Crowd Panda says, Starship Troopers is so underrated. People get caught up in the special effects and they don't pay attention to how profound the story really is. I think so too. You know, I love it. Clayton George says, favorite ad in RoboCop, the ad for the home game Nukem. I like the SUX 6000 or the 6000 SUX. That's my favorite. Yes, pre-live teaser. The 6000. I think it's 6000, not 2000 SUX. I think it's 6000 SUX, but I might be there. Thoreau Unfiction says Freejack is a weird movie. Freejack is a weird movie. It's a weird science fiction film with Emilio Estevez in it. And if I remember correctly, in True Romance, Freejack is always on TV. Is it True Romance? I think it's True Romance. Whenever they turn on the TV, Freejack is playing, I think, if I remember correctly. Crown Panda says, and also Total Recall is in the same universe as RoboCop and Starship Troopers. Yeah, I mean, is it? I guess it could be. Why not? Let's just call those the Verhoevenverse. RoboCop, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers. I have no problem. It's kind of like, Paul Anderson's Soldier is in the same universe as Blade Runner. Because you see the burned out spinner on the garbage planet from Blade Runner. So there's that continuity. And of course, I always thought that isn't Outland supposed to be in the same continuity as Alien, even though they're not, but they're supposed to be or something. Con Amalgamate, actually. So Peter Hyams' Con Am 27 that's on IO. It's the same company that made the faulty life support systems in Capricorn 1. There's a little known fact for you. Capricorn 1 and Outland are the same continuity. And that's true. You'll hear that here first. Let's see. What do you got going on here? Tommy says, one of the best things about Starship Troopers is the subversion and reversal of the hero's journey. Our main character starts out as a good, naive teenager and transforms into a fascist hard ass. Absolutely. I get to hang out with him, with Casper Van Dien a little bit at the end of Comic-Con. We took the train back from San Diego to LA. I've known his new wife, Jenny, for a long time, and they're great. He's a really delightful guy, nicest guy in the world, and impossibly handsome in real life. Well, so anyway, guys, that brings me to the end of this chat. My ongoing in a series. We're up to the letter F. So thank you for all the support. And as you know, I'm doing these weekly or actually daily drawings now. Every time I do a chat, anybody who sends in a super chat or becomes a Patreon subscriber or whatever, I'm adding you to a list, a permanent list. Your name goes onto this list, and I'm going to be giving away stuff, mostly comics from the 80s, all in mint condition. And I want to thank you for that continued support. And again, as I bring this Saturday chat to a close, I want to thank you all, you here of the Post Geek Singularity community, those who keep coming back, those who keep watching the chats. Please subscribe to my channel. Hit that little bell so you get notified whenever I go online. I'll probably be back tomorrow. And as always, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you've not heard. All you have to do is listen. And with that, the letter F, brought to you by the letter F, comes to an end. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys and girls, gentle beings, people from all around the universe. I really appreciate it.